Hello, Glitch Reaper here, and this is what should be the final part to my Evilcraft review. So, before I start in on the big subject, I'd just like to mention that it does have some additional cross-compatibility, whether or not I mentioned it before. Partially because some of it isn't in this version, although some of it is. But one of the things is, if you have forestry, you can use its squeezers specifically, and I don't know why it's not compatible with other squeezers, but you can get extra blood out of the parts of that tree. So, often enough to actually make up for the cost of making one, because sadly enough, undead trees usually produce no saplings, so yeah. Now, another thing about it is that there is some integration with Thaumcraft, and with Thaumcraft, you can actually make special caps for your wands that give you a discount that's between gold and thaumium caps, which is nice. You also can make a special set of scribing tools that uses blood from the blood around here. In other words, Evilcraft blood, in order to write with. So therefore, you can do your research off that. Although as easy as a time as I usually have finding ink, I probably wouldn't bother. And with blood magic, alchemical wizardry, there's something extra special you can make. I'm trying to remember if I don't think I dev. Why you do this to me, Windows? Anyhow, as I was gonna say, there's a special item you can make with blood magic, alchemical wizardry, and if you have a master blood orb, you can empower it with in the blood infuser, and it becomes something called the bound blood drop. What that does is it allows you to basically have infinite fuel for your Evilcraft machines, the cost of LP from your blood magic network, or what you call your soul network. And that's kind of an additional integration. There are a few others here and there, but otherwise that kind of summarizes the immediate cross-mod compatibility, and there may be more or more down the line. Now, as for this section, what it's about is pretty much this item array behind me. A lot of it's about choice. You kind of got to look through the book to find out what you really want to do. And what I mean by that is it's all about making your own custom brooms. And I have one over here. This is basically what the default broom it is. You can find it as treasure, but you can also make it yourself and recreate this exact broom. It used to be where brooms were always treasure. Then for a brief period of time he removed that whenever he made this whole system here I'm going to show. But then he brought it back as a default variation that you can still customize yourself, because you can add modifiers to your broom above and beyond the base design. So what this means is this whole thing is about, you may have guessed it, tinkering brooms. You don't need Tinker's Construct installed for that, even though it does have cross-mod compatibility with it. But it is inspired by Tinker's Construct, but it's a simpler system. You don't have to worry about using special blocks and stuff. Now, as I said before, everything has its own special modifiers, base traits, etc. And talking about modifiers, that's what this long row of things here is for, and I'll go over that in a moment. But the base components you'll be needing to make a broom of your own include the bear cap, the bear rod, and the bear brush, which I've got each here. But yeah, this represents the base system of making a broom, and they can be combined in a crafting table to make stuff. Now, to make a bear cap, you need, well, actually, it lists all three at once. I keep forgetting it does that for some reason. I think it's because they're technically the same item, but with metadata, so it's a bit special that way. But anyhow, for the bear cap, you need a dark gem and 2 crushed dark gems. For the bear rod, you need 3 dark sticks and a couple of crushed dark gems. And for the bear brush, you need 3 crushed dark gems and a couple of sticks, which is funny because they're actually in kind of a pickaxe configuration. But anyhow, what it is these components will make up your broom. You have the cap on the front, you have the rod in the middle, which is actually generally the most important part because it's where you get most of your traits from. And you have the bear brush, which is, you know, that thing at the end of your broom that you do the brushing with. Anyhow. But yeah, After that, you have various materials of which you can make them out of, and I can go over them to a degree here, although it is best in the book. But as you can see, the thing that you have the most materials to make something out of is actually the cap. And the rod comes in second place, even though it's technically the most important. And you have very few brushes. Now, the thing is about this system is these parts are very small, so I wasn't giving much away whenever I showed this section because they render so small on these display stands you could barely see them. So it's not like you'd be able to guess it so easily. Although one funny thing about it I found out is that anything so much as resembles a head seems to render sideways. So that was kind of funny. But the whole process and what all these things do is outlined very well in your guidebook. So yes, Origins of Darkness, time again. I do believe it is under Tools, and is saying about the Broom, Broom Basics, Broom Modifiers, Broom Parts. Basically is all about brooms, but this section is complicated enough where it takes on quite a bit of room, actually. But you can, in fact, use... there's another aspect of Evilcraft I didn't mention, because it's one of the things that's usually turned off in the configs, and that's that animals can basically create excrement piles, and you can clean them up with any broom. So, yeah, you may have to do cleaning if it's been configured that way, but usually that's not the case. Now, the thing is, the biggest use of a broom is flying around. And here it's basically described, in fact, you need the rod, the brush, the caps, and all that jazz. But the biggest thing that is really going to go over is what these things actually mean. Now, once you have them assembled and actually meaning something in the first place, you can put them in your crafting table in a shapeless recipe to make your brooms. Although, I prefer to do it in the classic row of cap, rod, brush, but yeah, it's just a good way to keep track. But yeah, this is those basic recipes. Now, before I get into modifiers, I'm actually going to skip over this for a moment and go with basically how these parts matter. Like, as I was saying, the wooden rod here. This, and again, you always need the bare version, and then you promote it up into something that has actual material modifiers and base traits. Now, the thing about it is that any of the bare versions of the broom parts cannot be used directly to make a broom. You absolutely have to turn them into a finished product before you manage to put it into the proper parts, make sure that it all fits together, and make yourself a good broom. The wooden one is considered be the typical model, and it takes a couple of planks as well as the bare rod. And you'll see a few traits here whenever I'm holding shift. One of which is that things like speed, maneuverability, and acceleration and levitation. Now, what those mean? Well, speed is obviously how fast you go. Maneuverability is how fast you can turn. So, yes, you may actually be turning very slowly in place if that number is low. And you can turn on a dime if it's really fast. You also have acceleration, so that's how fast you go from being stopped to full speed. And you have levitation. That's the measure of how fast you can go upwards. So it's basically how well you can rise whenever you're flying. Now you can see that there's also some other things that are different between them, like those traits are very different with stone. And you also see a trait on it that you didn't see before. You may have noticed max modifiers, and that'll go in very heavily when I go into the modifier system. Now, sturdiness is basically how well it can take a hit without destabilizing. So, yeah, you may want to beware of taking damage in flight, partially because it'll slow you down or make you unstable. But yeah, max modifiers is something I'll go over later because of the whole modification system. And they do add some of those kind of traits. Like, you can get sturdiness otherwise. You don't necessarily have to start with a stone rod. And this is where you get into the balance of your broom. You want to balance yourself between your initial base traits and bonus traits that the particular rod or other part adds. So, and also remember that some of these are exclusive to certain parts. Like, there's certain very particular things you cannot add later. And that's something that's actually more often on the caps than the rods. And now, we've got the bone rod, a couple of bones in the bare rod, kind of like we had stone with a couple of stone. A lot of these are in that kind of pattern. so that helps out. This one mainly just has decent stats, so you can fly with a bone version. Now, this is one of them that has a particular trait that is one of those things that, yes, you can add it later, but it definitely has a little advantage there. Flame. If you have the flame trait, you burn things that you collide with. And that's another thing. Collision damage is another special trait that you can consider. You can actually use your broom as a weapon now. Before, it was just a tool for flying. It also didn't use fuel either. So that was also a trait, and I'll go into that because the thing is that's actually very particular. Is it used to be free flight, but kind of standardized so much that they're going, yeah, a broom's a broom. So in this case, you're going, hey, you got a special trait here. You can burn things with it. Nice. So your blaze rod, which is funny because it's named blaze rod, it needs blaze rods to make it. So yeah. Have the reed rod. This one seems to have some pretty good maneuverability and acceleration, but not much top speed. A bit better levitation than the standard wooden rod, though. And you're going to need a couple of sugar canes for that. Now, Netherrack is an interesting balance. It has a very high number of base modifiers, and even though it's not as maneuverable, it has good speed and acceleration. Typically, 100 is considered okay. It's, kind of average-ish for starting out, but another thing you need to take into account is all the parts traits. If you see a similar trait on another part, it adds together. So all of these traits do add together. It is additive, not subtractive, not multiplicative. It is always additive, so all these will go together. So again, base yourself on the rod, but then note the other parts will add on to it. Now you'll need a bit of netherrack for that one, obviously. Now the Obsidian Rod has really high sturdiness, and a good number of modifiers. It doesn't have good acceleration, and its max speed is just a little bit low. It's sort of maneuverable, but not really. So this one is mainly your, I want to tinker up a one to more after-the-fact type rod. But the amount of sturdiness is particularly high. I mean, it's obsidian. You'd think you'd be pretty tough, so a couple of obsidian, a bear rod for that. Yeah, it might be a good trade. Now we have the Undead Rod. This is, again, where you have a special trait you don't see very often. Now, it takes undead planks, which are only from the mod, so remember that you'll need to do a little bit of work on that. But it also has something called Efficiency 10. This is a trait that determines how often it is that you use your fuel, because it means that there's a certain chance of not using a little bit per unit of time. So basically, a bit of efficiency means it goes around for longer. So basically think of that as increasing your virtual tank size, even though I don't know if there's a way to actually increase the base amount of fuel that it can carry. So you remember that you use a little less blood overall if you have more efficiency on it. Now here we have the Prismarine Rod. It's got a trait called swimming, and it's got decent sturdiness. It may not have good acceleration, and it doesn't have any particular trait at all towards maneuverability, and that's another thing. Some of your other parts will add maneuverability. Remember how I said everything's additive? Sometimes you need to make up for the complete lack of something on one part with a lot more on another, or remember to modify it after the fact. Now, swimming helps you move through liquids. So you can literally zip through the water on your broom. No, does not add automatic water breathing. Now, you'll need a bit of Prismarine to do this, so that's something to keep in mind, is to be able to do this, you will need to first have found an ocean monument in all likelihood, or have mods that allow you to fight guardians otherwise. We have the Ice Rod. This one is a bit slippery, so handle with care. Now you have a little bit of ice to do that, which may be a bit of a trick in and of itself, so stay frosty. We have the Sponge Rod. Now this one has an interesting balance. It actually has both a good amount of swimming, and it has a special trait called Bouncy. So even though it may not be the fastest to accelerate or the best top speed, it has the ability of helping you ram things, because the Bouncy trait, and again you can add that after the fact as well, allows you to knock things to the side that you collide with, which may indirectly cause a good amount of fall damage if you knock them off a cliff. So yeah, it's definitely a dastardly trait to put on, but hey, again, it's Evilcraft. Now here we have the Stone Rod. It has a decent amount of additional modifiers. It also has good, it has kind of okay traits and a good amount of sturdiness. But I guess you could say it's mainly for style. take a couple of instone in the bear rod to make this one. Now you also have one that requires some purple block, so another reason to have a trip to the end. And it is the purple rod, not to be confused with an end rod. But it seems to have some decent traits, but it also has a very high amount of levitation. The reason for that is simple. Those materials are kind of associated with shulkers, which have been known to fling you upwards. So you'd kind of imagine the material would have a very amount, darn, I'm having a bit of a weird time here. A very good amount of, well, going up. So, yeah, that's good for flying in the sky. Now we're getting into the brushes. And remember, again, these will add things onto your overall broom. So if you've got ones a bit slow, like some of those that you saw the stats of earlier, this one may help you out a decent amount. It requires a couple of hay bales and the bare brush. And this one has a speed of 100. That's the only real modifier to it, is it adds 100 speed. But hey, if you need a speedy broom, there's an idea. Now you also have the wool brush. I don't think it's just orange wool. I think the book just doesn't show it as well. So I think you can use white if you need to, or something like that. Now this adds a decent amount of speed, but also a good amount of levitation. So if you need a little bit more lift and a bit more bit more zip, the wool brush might be more your thing. Now we also have the feather brush. It adds 200 levitation. It's super light, so for a few feathers and the bare brush, you can go higher a lot quicker. I guess it's because of the association with flight. Yeah, probably. Now we also have. Okay, now I know I know it's just grabbing things from the rest of the instance, because there's no way that it would normally know that mangrove leaves would be compatible. So you know they're dictionaried. But anyhow, this brush requires a couple of leaf blocks, and it just adds a little bit of speed. So you're kind of better off with wheat if you really want a speed boost. But they also do have things about their looks, so if you want a very aesthetic one, you can kind of make yourself a nice Frankenbroom over there of various things. Funny to even think about it like a Frankenbroom! Anyhow, and now we have the Twig Brush, which uses dark sticks specifically, although it might be able to use other sticks. But again, it wouldn't take too much of an issue to get those. But it adds some extra maneuverability. Remember I always said one of them before didn't have any maneuverability at all in terms of the rods? Well, this makes up for that. So you might need to complement it with one of these. Now we also get into the caps. Now, the Dark Gym Cap takes a couple of dark gems in addition to bare cap. So remember that one took a dark gem in and of itself, so that's at least 3 straight up dark gems right there, which is actually fairly easy to get, especially if you got high power fortune. Now, this is interesting because it shows that the caps also tend to add additional modifier slots. Remember how I said it all adds together? So you have one that has, say, 6 max modifiers, and you add this on, it'll have 7. So again, it all adds up. Now, this one gives you a maneuverability of 50 added on as well, so this one gives you a couple of perks. But there'll also be some others that are even better. Now, this is the Diamond Gym Cap. A couple of diamonds going with the bare cap, and you get yourself something that adds a little bit of maneuverability, 2 max modifiers rather than just 1, and some serious extra sturdiness. So, you may want to armor your broom with the ability to fly through without being interfered with. That's where this one comes in. Now, you also have the Emerald Gym Cap. Again, a couple of emeralds, so yeah. This adds some decent maneuverability, a couple of max modifiers, kind of like how this one did, like 2 rather than just 1. And even though they have the same stats on those 2 things, it adds a different additional perk. This one adds extra sturdiness, this one adds extra acceleration. You get 100 points of acceleration for putting on the Emerald Cap. I guess it would be good for flying to the Emerald City. Anyhow. Now, we also have the Quartz Gym Cap. This one requires a couple of nether quartz in addition to the bare cap, so it's a nice one. But although it adds some maneuverability, it also adds a good amount of collision damage. Now, out of all the caps I've looked over, this is the only one I've seen that directly adds that much collision damage right off the bat as a major component. And it's actually more efficient to do it with this than to add that on later. You can, in fact, use quartz to add damage as part of the modifier system. But it's actually more effective to put it on as a cap. I guess it's a literal tip of the spear situation. But yeah, the thing about collision damage is the faster you go, the more it deals. So I guess you could say that's more damage scaling. You will do some base damage when you run into something. Whenever you have collision damage is one of your traits. But unless you actually have collision damage directly there, you will not deal direct damage. You may be able to deal it indirectly by flinging them around, setting them on fire, etc. But unless you have it actually saying it has collision damage, that won't happen by default. So this is a particularly important one if you want a weapon. Now, the Dark Power Gym Cap is something extra special. It takes a couple of Dark Power Gems in addition to the Bear Cap, and you get yourself something that has an extra max modifier and a boost to maneuverability, but you also get efficiency 10 as well. So combined with the Undead Rod, you could have a fairly efficient broom to go around. So if you want a distance runner, those two traits would be those two parts would be very good to put together. Now, still going on with caps, we have Skeleton Skull Cap. This only takes one other component rather than the Bear Cap. So unlike some of the others that took like 2 or 3, this one just takes 1. But it's kind of a bit rare because you're going to need a skeleton skull. It gives you a serious boost to maneuverability at 150. Now you have the one that is absolutely unique out of the caps. It's the only one that adds this trait, and there's another one that does that too. So when considering your initial build, you might want to have a trade-off of something that you can only put into it on creation and not have, and you literally can't add it afterwards. Because I tried figuring out a way to do it, and it does not work. But if you have a Wither Skeleton Skull and the Bear Cap, you can make the Wither Skeleton Skull Cap. This thing adds a special trait called Witherer. If you have this, you will cause wither to things that you fly past. So, yeah, that is definitely a weaponizable trait. Now here we have another one that's also unique, the Zombie Skull Cap, and for that you need a zombie head. It gives you Hungerer as well as collision damage, so you deal a bit of damage whenever you hit, although not as much as the Quartz version, and you also give them the Hunger status. So which is actually more appropriate now that husks are out, so that one I guess you kind of guessed, because this has actually been out since before that. Now, we also have the, well, a player head, and it just gives you a decent extra boost to speed, but otherwise nothing extra special about it. So that one, I think, I mean, for the effort of getting a player head by comparison, I think that's kind of meh. But hey, if you really want to just intimidate your foe a bit, again, there is something to be said about the looks department. Now, there's also the Creeper head version. If you have a Creeper skull cap, it gives you something called Kamikaze. I would not suggest using this unless you have something that makes you immune to explosions, because whenever you hit something or a creature, it blows up, or at least generates an explosion directly around the broom, not you. So you can still take the explosive damage. So not entirely suggestible. I think he added that one in as a partial self-trolling device. But of course, if you have immunity, then you might be able to survive. I don't even know if the broom survives at all afterwards, so I don't know if I'd be willing to take that risk, because I'd want to keep my broom intact, thank you very much. Now here's another one with a truly unique trait as well. And there are some of these like this, like this one is like that, the whole hunger thing. But there's also, if you have 3 Wither Skeleton Skulls to work with this, you can make the Wither Skull Cap. This one gives you a trait called Wither Shield. It means that, like the Wither itself, whenever you're moving around, you basically can deflect projectiles, which is actually particularly cool. Now, you can also use a couple of iron ingots to get yourself the, and of course the Bear Cap, obviously, get yourself the Iron Metal Cap. It gives you some extra speed, sturdiness, and maneuverability. So it's kind of a good all-round add, especially if you just need that little extra oomph. Now, you also have a nice gold version for gold ingots. It gives you some speed, sturdiness, and maneuverability as well. For some odd reason, copper is here. I know that this means that there's probably additional cross-mod content in general for special metals, but this seems to be the only one I've got directly in this instance. So, special note there, copper gives you the Copper Metal Cap. It can give you bursts of speed, sturdiness, and maneuverability. So it's kind of good that way. Now, this one is, again, because of... don't think of it just with coagulated blood from Tinker's Construct, because this is, again, because of Or Dictionary compatibility. Those could easily just be regular slime balls. The slime cat... Darn. Slime cat. That would be kind of funny. That would be a weird mod. Anyhow, the slime cap, it gives you speed, acceleration, a good amount of, might I add, like sturdiness, and also the bouncy trait directly. So, and a pretty good amount. Again, sometimes it's more efficient to do so off an initial piece. In this case, you get a lot more bouncy this way than if you were just adding in 2 slime balls later with the modifier system. So, this means you could use this as a good ramming device and bouncing things away. Now, I'm going to back up a bit and go to the modifier system. The modifier system is why I outlined all these things here, is each one of these particular things can be used as a modifier. And special note, out of all these things, the one thing that doesn't stack is an iron pickaxe. So keep that in mind whenever you're doing your build, because you may need to have some extra room in your inventory. Anyhow, on with the show. Broom modifiers. Now, they also say a few things about base traits, like the modifier count being the maximum modifiers that it can have, the speed, acceleration, maneuverability, levitation, ability to fly up, as I was saying. Damage, even though it just says damage here, it will say collision damage specifically on the broom. It's just saying it's noted slightly differently for certain things here as it is there. Particles, interesting. You may be able to have yourself a trail of particles if you use a special modifier to have so. You may also note none of those things had it initially. None of those parts at all. There are certain things you have to add later. Particles is mainly an act of fanciness. And so yeah. A flame, the ability of getting any collided entity on fire. Smash is interesting. The higher the value, the better you're able to break blocks. You can literally smash through them. I may or may not be able to demonstrate this because the one thing I've got it on right now is crashing the game. So, yeah. So I'll just be showing off some basic brooming rather than using it to mine. Note that some other versions may be more stable with this particular trait and moving around with it, so again, this may be shown off later in like a series I do later at some point, or maybe even somebody else's if they happen to be good at tinkering brooms, or for that matter, watch this and figured out how to do it when they were wondering about how in the world it worked. But anyhow, for every higher level you have, it helps you a little bit better at breaking blocks, and really high levels of smash enable you to break harder blocks. Like, for example, breaking stone compared to obsidian. You'd need a much higher value to break obsidian than you would to break stone. I'm not entirely sure if the max level can go up that high in terms of breaking obsidian, but I'm just using that as an example. But I know, for example, it'll allow you to break better ores and actually get their drops. So you can use this as a mass mining tool, and in a very fun way. Bouncy, as I was saying, anything collided with goes flying. So they just get bounced away. So, boing! Wither, as I was saying, that unique ability to apply wither to collided entities. Hungerer, giving them hunger status. Kamikaze, again, you probably don't want to use this one, and only one thing has it. But colliding with an entity, the broom will explode. It even says right here it's very unlikely that a mounted player would survive something like this. In other words, we don't know why you'd like this, but I'm putting it in there just for thoroughness. A wither shield, the higher the value, the larger the chance that the mounted player will be protected from incoming projectiles. Well, there's only one thing that makes the modifier value, so it is what it is on that one. Toughness, this is actually really the sturdiness trait. Remember, as I said, it's listed a little differently than here than it is with some of the brooms. This is why I noted that before. It's called sturdiness as a modifier on the broom. It's called toughness just in the book for some reason. Now, the higher modifier will make it less darn lips again. Really shouldn't have eaten right before this. Anyhow, higher modifier values will make a broom less influenced by external factors during movement. In other words, you don't have your moves influenced by, say, being hit by arrows from a sniping skeleton, or for that matter, being I kind of ran through nearby to explosions, pushing forces from people with force field capabilities, etc. Yeah, just all sorts of crazy stuff. But basically, it makes it where you stay true in your flight path more. So the tougher it is through the sturdiness trait, the harder it will be to manipulate you while you're on your broom. And you can't get knocked off as easy. You don't get bounced away, whatever. So that's a good trait to make sure you have a decent amount of efficiency. As I explained before, the better this is, the more efficient your broom will be, and it only has a limited reserve. Now, swimming. This is, as I was saying, it makes it better maneuverable and faster in liquids like water. So you can go underwater with it and basically submarine. Most swimming modifier is related to Prismarine or Sponge. So again, remember, when it comes to traits, that you'll need some stuff from an ocean monument. Icy, you slow down colliding entities, so you apply a slowness status to them. Now we get into showing what each of these is that can actually add things. If you add a nether star to it, then you add an additional max modifier. This is kind of like how in Tinker's Construct there was a similar thing you could do for a while where you could do that, adding additional max modifiers to your tools. The balance of that mod has changed a bit, making that a bit trickier. But here, on the other hand, inspired by Tinker's Construct, it's fully in here. You can add additional modifiers all up. I don't know if it has an actual maximum on the max. So, does the max have a max? That's a question even I've got. I have added a few to make my super broom that apparently crashes the game. I'm, again, really hoping I'd to have thought it in advance that I could have made a less powerful broom, because I would have wanted to show off it. So, yeah. Now, you can also add redstone to add a little bit of speed. You can add blocks of coal to add acceleration. You can also add glowstone to add maneuverability. Feathers add levitation. And if you have spikes, like actual spikes made from earlier, then you add additional collision damage. So remember, you get several of those at once whenever you craft them. So this wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea to do. You can also, as a unique modifier, you can add gunpowder to add particles. That's the one that, as I said, is basically just being fancy with it. But hey, if you want to show off your broom, why not? You also have the flame trait added with blaze powder. So you can get a little toasty with that one. The only one that lets you have smash is whenever you add pickaxes. Now, this is kind of weird because originally it showed an iron pickaxe, and the one that I've made has plenty of smash, and this one is showing a diamond pickaxe. So I'm begin wondering if you have to either use these for higher levels or if this is just adding more smash at once. I think it's adding more smash at once because I think an iron one will add less smash and this adds more. Let me see here. It's not showing that. Okay, so I don't know why it's showing diamond now when earlier for me it was showing iron. Maybe he rehashed it whenever I did the update. But anyhow, you can add slime balls to add levels of bouncy, so you can bounce your enemies away with that one. You can also add acceleration by with blocks of coal, so that does two things actually. Remember, well, oh no, it just has it listed twice. Oops. Sorry about that. But anyhow, you can also add sturdiness by adding straight up stone. So that can help. Dark power gems add efficiency. Note again how, as I said, it's sometimes more efficient to add it directly as a part. Well, I know you get more efficiency than this whenever you make the dark power gem cap, like a plus 10, rather than for just a couple of these in the cap structure, rather than being just one efficiency each when added as a modifier later. Now, you also have the ability to use Prismarine to add the swimming trait and packed ice to add icy. Now, remember, it took just regular ice to get the icy trait before. So, some of these things it really is better to do earlier than later if you really want that on a broom. Now, all of this is done simply in a crafting table. You don't have to worry about crazy extra blocks or special processes. And before I try doing a new custom broom, because of, as I said, previous issues, I'm going to take this one out for a slight spin. And also note it has a capacity of 10,000. This is about as good as it gets in terms of capacity, so the rest is based on your efficiency rating. Now, at least as far as I know, I don't think you can upgrade these in terms of their capacity. But you have the ability to do the following traits here. Because this is a standardized broom, as I said, it can be found as treasure, but it does have modifier slots, so you can still make it unique. Now, the parts here are wheat brush, dark gym cap, and wooden rod. It has an acceleration rate of 50. It has a levitation rate of 20, a speed rating of 200, and a maneuverability also of 200. Now note that it doesn't have any other modifiers or special traits otherwise, so those are basically good, decent base stats. Now, you also should note that it has a number on the left and the right for each of those traits. Now, the numbers on the left are representing what its current stat really is, and the ones on the right are representing maximums. So, basically said, there are certain limitations as to how good you can do this. Now, the controls for a broom are actually pretty tricky. Yeah, and as I was saying, the controls for a broom are actually pretty easy. Now, whenever you click with it, it automatically puts you on the broom. I'm in creative right now, so it automatically put it under me, and I still have a copy of the broom. It's kind of a weird little duplicating thing that happens there, but there's also a certain thing that kind of cancels that out a little bit later. Now, since I'm in creative, I won't be using any blood from it, but now it's time for me to show what it's like to fly on this broom. As you can see, it looks pretty nice. Now, it does re-angle whenever you re-angle. So whenever you look up, it kind of goes more up. Looking a bit more down, it goes more down, and whichever direction you're looking. This is important because of the way you fly it. You just use mainly forward and reverse buttons as you have set in your keyboard already. So whatever you use to just walk around in Minecraft already, it uses. So I'm going forward, and I'm looking a bit more up. I'm going up-ish. Remember, levitation trait's only so strong here. I can also do some maneuvers where I can suddenly slow down, and I can even back up. I'm backing up. I'm backing up on a broom. Okay, if I'm flying backwards, I need to know where I'm going. See, I'm flying backwards on a broom. Remember, your controls are a little reversed whenever you're going in reverse mode, but I can fly in various directions on this broom quite easily, even backwards. So you kind of got a little bit of a hummingbird type maneuverability there, but it's still limited by the actual maneuverability rating on the broom. So remember that if it has a very high maneuverability, you'll be able to turn around pretty quickly. Remember, I am not flying in creative mode type flying. I'm flying with broom flight. So some of these maneuvers, you can see that I have a bit of a turning radius. This is again because of my maneuverability rating. Slow down. Okay, okay. Now to get off your broom, you can just sneak. Also, if you're in creative mode, it kinda disintegrates. Unless you're somehow displaced from it, which has happened to me a couple of times because apparently that one crash kind of causes that to happen where you get displaced from your broom. And note that I still have a copy here. Now, as for the one that's been crashing the world, I'll just show it real quick because it's kind of a little ridiculous. I did not realize it would be crashing my game, so when I called it World Record 9000, I didn't assume that would actually be the case because I was using it to test the smash trait, and instead it kind of smashed me out of the world. But, yeah. I gave it a lot of modifiers, and apparently the game currently can't stand a broom this powerful. It may be a specific trait like Smash, because it would indicate updating and destroying blocks, but it could be just that I added too many things. So I'm going to quickly create for myself a totally new broom, and show how this works. Now, remember how I said it can be done in a normal crafting table? This also counts anything else that counts as a crafting table. So the wooden exalted crafter will work just fine, so I can do this creatively. Now, as for very particular traits, let me think here. The classic wheat brush is actually decently good. It's actually decently good for a brush. But if I had to pop through real quick and make another decision, I always can because these are associated. And all of it's in the book. See, I don't want just good levitation. I want a balance. So I think I might go with wool. So yeah, I'll take myself a wool brush for later. And note it always shows up white. Again, that's something where I'm wondering what's up with that. Because it was showing orange in the thing. But that's just, again, that's just Forge being funny with some regards. Now, as for the rods, that's a pretty big decision. Now, earlier on, I kind of had a thing for the Netherrack rod because I thought it was a pretty good balance. But if I want to be able to really fly, I could take up another one. The Undead Rod is good for efficiency, so I think I'll take that this time. So I have the Undead Rod. Now, as for a cap, remember, as I said, some of them have different traits that really don't correspond with anything else. Just in case the withering aspect was what was causing trouble, or bounciness, I won't go with that. Instead, I think I'd like to go with, let's see, where was that Dark Power Gym Cap? Because I want to see if I can max out my efficiency. Was it this one here? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to try to max out my efficiency. So I'll get myself some extra maneuverability, get a max modifier off of this one. I'll have a base modifier of 4, but then added 2 by this, so it'll be 5. Overall, my maneuverability should be about 200, which is decently good. Acceleration will be 50 off that alone, but I'll have even more speed actually because of this, so yeah. Levitation should, let me see, levitation 100, 120. So it should be about 120. So remember how some of these traits should add together. Now my max modifiers will add together, everything will add together. So yeah, again, addition. Thank you. Okay, now remember, as I said, these are shapeless recipes. So if I put this stuff in a line that doesn't seem to quite work, it still works. So these are shapeless. Get your parts together and everything is fine. So this one says Broom. Yeah. Okay, I will have acceleration of 50. It'll have levitation at 120. Efficiency rating of plus 20. Out of 30, I might add, so that one can't really be raised too terribly high. It'll also have maneuverability rating of 200 off the bat, and its speed will be 200, and that's out of 300, so that's actually pretty nice. So all this together means I am going for high efficiency and base power. Now to fuel these up, kind of like with other stuff, you need to do that in a blood infuser, and now it's fueled up. So I have myself a custom broom already. I could also rename it if you wish. So, I think I'll do so right now, actually. Economy broom. Because I'm trying to be economical with it, so yeah. Now, so this one is going to be really nifty. Now, as I said, I can do modifiers. And what was this one lacking? Well, not too much. But if I wanted to, say, make it even more efficient, I can add some of these. So, Dark Power Gem. That's weird. I thought they stacked higher than that. Anyhow, now, as I said before, you can also do all of this in your crafting table. Now, the interesting thing is whenever you're adding modifiers, you can actually add more than one at once by spreading around it here. Like it's saying right now that I'll be gaining additional efficiency by adding in these. Well, right now it's already set there. Okay, yeah. So my efficiency rating will go up whenever I add this. See how it's saying it's adding a +1 there, and it's going to be better. Yeah. See now I'm definitely adding to it, because you can see now that I can add all these at once. So efficiency 8 is actually pretty good. So let's make this super efficient. So that overall is a pretty good amount of efficiency. But what else do I want to add? Now also note that some of these things will add more than one modifier slot if you keep extending it, kind of like with Tinker's Construct. So if you really push a trait, you'll actually use up more than one modifier slot. But also remember that you can add a nether star to improve that even more. So I've got a very efficient broom right now. And if I wanted to add something else, let's see here. What would I want to add here? Because I'm a little cautious about the whole smashing thing, but particles would be kind of cool to demonstrate regardless. Oops, wrong thing. I didn't mean to do that. I almost forgot that whenever you hit the middle click button on these display stands, that it actually copies the item that's in them, which is kind of funny. I was just wanting to get myself a stack of gunpowder and seeing how far I can really push this whole particles thing, and then see if I can make some fancy particles. Just to show that there is some good reasoning behind that. Particles. See, particles. Okay. Now, so, as it is saying, this one's not using up as much modifiers in and of itself, but it will max out. Okay. Okay. And this one is about maxed out, so I just need to... That's as much as it can take. So, got myself a broom that has 3 out of 5 modifiers taken up. Has itself some nice particles, some speed, maneuverability, efficiency. It's got pretty much the works on terms of just base traits, plus it has particles. So it will be a nice sparkly broom. So this one doesn't have traits like smasher stuff that I'm deeming a little risky right now, but it should be particularly fine. So I'm going to go out and give this thing a test drive. Also note that whenever you put on modifiers, it actually displays on the broom in these forms of rings. Each one represents a modifier slot that you have put up on your broom. So, well, actually, let me just model this broom a little bit. Yeah, it does look kind of nice. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, the wool brush does kind of go against the kind of darker colors. But there's not as many options for darker colored brushes right now. So, yeah, I could have went with wheat, and I kind of would have went with it. But, hey, I wanted a custom broom that would be extra special, and I had to boost the traits somehow. So, the brush was a good idea. Okay. And as I said before, it goes automatically on it. Now, I'll try to render. Now, I'm going to head off with this for more than one reason. One of which is this may crash the game because I was having issues before. So let's see if the sparkliness actually gets demonstrated. Okay, I'm going to in fact move upward. Okay. So this is Glitch Reaper. I'll be signing off like a rocket in a moment, in all likelihood. And so, I hope to hear from you all soon, so bye for now, everybody. Oh, they're reddish particles. They're reddish particles. Okay, that's different. Oh, this is a different kind of rocket. I was so thinking this would be particles like from an end rod or something, for some reason. Okay. Well, this has been cool. Bye, everybody.